It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that used to start with a hot cup of coffee and the sound of birds outside my kitchen window. The light spilled across the old oak table where a dozen framed photos sat. My family, my students, my life in snapshots. I picked one up, a picture from my daughter's wedding. I smiled at the faces I knew so well, until I reached one woman standing beside my late wife. Her face was familiar, but her name was gone. Completely gone. I stared at that photo for nearly 5 minutes, whispering names under my breath, trying to pull it from the back of my mind like a word caught on the tip of my tongue, but nothing came. My chest tightened. It wasn't the first time I'd forgotten something, but this one felt different. It wasn't a phone number or where I'd put my keys. It was a person, someone I'd known for 30 years. When I told my doctor about moments like that, he just smiled and said, "It's normal, George. You're 68. The brain slows down. Don't worry so much." But how could I not worry? What if one day I looked at my daughter and drew the same blank? What if I forgot her name too? That morning, I sat at that kitchen table long after my coffee went cold, the picture still in my hands. I felt something between fear and anger. Fear that my mind was slipping away, and anger that everyone else seemed to accept it as normal. But somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "No, not yet." I didn't know it then, but that small voice, that refusal to surrender, would change everything. Because just a few months later, I'd discover a daily habit so simple, it almost sounded silly. Yet it would bring my memory and my life back to me. When I was a kid growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, everyone used to joke that I had a brain like a camera. I could look at a phone number once and dial it days later. My dad would test me for fun. He'd read me the grocery list just once, and I'd rattle it back perfectly, even remembering the brand names. "That's my boy," he'd laugh, patting my shoulder. Got a mind sharper than a tack. Back then, memory wasn't something I worked on. It was just part of me. I remembered birthdays, license plates, even the score from every Phillies game in 1969. My teachers loved it. I was the kid who never forgot an answer. It felt like my brain was this powerful machine that would never fail me. But the person who admired it most was my mother. She used to say, "George, your mind is your greatest gift. Protect it." She'd tell me stories about her father, my grandfather, who'd slowly lost his memory in his 70s. I remember her eyes welling up when she said, "He forgot who I was, George. Promise me you'll take care of that mind of yours." I promised, of course. I was just a boy then. I thought forgetting was something that happened to other people. As I got older, that memory helped me become a teacher. I taught history for nearly 40 years, and my students used to joke that I was a walking textbook. I could recite the Gettysburg Address from heart, with pauses in all the right places. I loved those moments, watching their eyes light up when history came alive through words I remembered perfectly. But looking back now, I can see it. The irony. The same memory that once made me feel powerful would one day become my greatest fear. Because somewhere along the line, the sharpness started to fade, and the boy who once remembered everything began to forget. The first time I noticed something was off, I was 60 years old and standing in front of my class, talking about the Civil War. I'd given that same lecture 100 times, but in the middle of a sentence, I stopped. The date, 1863, just slipped out of my head. I laughed it off, made a joke, and kept going. The students laughed too, but inside, I felt a tiny spark of panic. After that, it started happening more often. I'd walk into the kitchen and forget why I was there. I'd set down my glasses and spend half an hour looking for them, only to find them on top of my head. My wife, Carol, teased me gently. "You're just getting older, George," she'd say, with that sweet smile of hers. I'd laugh along, but late at night, lying awake, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then came the day I forgot my best friend's name. We were at the grocery store, bumped into him near the dairy aisle. I knew his face immediately, but when he reached out to shake my hand, my mind went blank. No name, just empty space where it should have been. I covered it up with a quick, "Hey, buddy!" But inside, I felt sick. That night, I sat on the porch with Carol and confessed how scared I was. She squeezed my hand and said, "You're fine, George. Everyone forgets things sometimes." I wanted to believe her, but the truth was, the cracks were growing. By 65, those little lapses turned into long pauses, forgotten appointments, misplaced bills. I started writing everything down on sticky notes, plastering them across the fridge, the mirror, even my car dashboard. I told myself it was just stress or fatigue, but deep down, I knew I was lying. I could feel it happening, the slow unraveling of a mind that once felt unbreakable. And what terrified me most wasn't what I was forgetting. It was who I might forget next. By the time I turned 68, forgetting had become part of my daily routine. I'd walk into the grocery store and stand in the middle of an aisle, staring at shelves, wondering what I'd come for. Sometimes I'd leave the stove on. Once, I even forgot to lock the front door overnight. Carol tried to stay patient, but I could see the worry in her eyes, especially the night I forgot our wedding anniversary for the first time in 43 years. That's when she insisted I see the doctor. I remember sitting in that sterile white office, the clock ticking louder than it should have. Dr. Andrews was a kind man, but when I told him what was happening, he gave me a sympathetic smile and said, "It's normal, George. Everyone your age has memory lapses. It's just part of aging. Normal." That word hit me like a slap. I wanted to believe him, to think this was just a harmless part of getting older. But when he said it, something in me broke. Because normal meant accepting that the person I'd been my whole life, a man who remembered everything, was gone. He ran a few quick tests, asked me to recall words and repeat patterns, then patted my shoulder. "Don't stress about it," he said. "The more you worry, the worse it gets." I nodded, pretending to feel reassured, but as I walked out, I felt smaller somehow, like I was leaving a piece of myself behind in that room. That night, I sat on the couch with the TV on mute. Carol was knitting beside me, and I caught myself staring at her face, trying to remember every detail, just in case the day came when I couldn't. Her smile lines, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the soft gray in her hair. I didn't tell her, but I made a silent promise. If my mind was slipping, I wasn't going to let it go quietly, because maybe my doctor was right. Maybe forgetting was normal, but I was determined to prove that normal didn't mean hopeless. A few weeks after that doctor's visit, I started taking morning walks around the park near my house. At first, it was just to clear my head. The doctor had said exercise might help, so I figured I'd try. But really, I just needed to think. Or maybe to remember. It was a cool October morning when I met her. A woman sitting alone on a bench, scattering crumbs for the birds. She looked to be in her 70s, wearing a light blue coat and a smile that felt oddly familiar. I nodded politely, and she greeted me like an old friend. "You walk this early every day?" she asked. "Trying to," I said. "Doctor's orders. Says it'll keep my head straight," she chuckled. "Doctors always say that, but sometimes it takes more than walking to wake up the brain." Something in her tone caught my attention. I sat down beside her. "You sound like you know what you're talking about." She nodded. "I do. I used to be just like you. Couldn't remember a thing. Names, dates, recipes, all gone. My doctor said it was normal aging, too." I leaned closer. "And? What happened?" She smiled and tapped her temple. "I found my own medicine. 10 minutes a day. That's all it took. I trained my memory like it was a muscle." I frowned. 10 minutes doing what?" She laughed softly. "Something simple, something consistent. But you wouldn't believe me if I told you how small it was." Her words stuck in my mind like a riddle. Before I could ask for details, she stood up, brushed crumbs from her coat, and said, "Come back tomorrow, same time. I'll tell you more." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. A stranger in the park, claiming she'd fixed her failing memory with a few minutes a day. It sounded too good to be true. Yet, for the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. And I knew I'd be at that bench the next morning, waiting. The next morning, I got to the park before sunrise. The air was crisp, and the world felt quiet, like it was holding its breath. I waited on that same bench, watching the light stretch across the grass until finally, the woman appeared. Same blue coat, same calm smile. "You came back," she said, sitting down beside me. "I'm a man of my word," I replied. "Now tell me about this 10-minute miracle," she laughed. "It's not a miracle, George. It's discipline. Every morning I pick something to memorize. A poem, a recipe, a quote from a book. Then at night, I try to recite it from memory. Some days I fail. Some days I surprise myself. But I never skip a day." I must have looked skeptical because she grinned. "You don't stop using your legs if you want to keep walking, right? The brain's the same way. You've got to keep it moving." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It was so simple, too simple. But what did I have to lose? That night, I picked up an old book of poetry Carol used to love. I chose Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. I read it 3 times, closed the book, and tried to repeat the first few lines. I stumbled, forgot, started over, again and again. It felt awkward, almost childish, but for the first time in a long while, my mind felt alive. The next morning, I did it again. And the morning after that, 10 minutes became 15. I started testing myself on grocery lists, phone numbers, even old student names from my teaching days. Slowly, the fog began to lift. I started remembering where I put my keys. I stopped losing track of what I was saying mid-sentence. I even recalled a recipe Carol used to make, her famous peach cobbler, without looking at her old notebook. It was working. That tiny daily ritual, those 10 minutes of focus, were waking up my brain one layer at a time. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was slipping away. I felt like I was coming back. It's strange how quietly change happens. You don't notice it at first. Then one morning, you wake up and realize you feel different. That's what happened to me about 3 months after I started my 10-minute habit. The fog that once clung to my thoughts had begun to lift. I could recall conversations, names, even little details like the color of my neighbor's mailbox or the smell of rain the night before. Along with my mental exercises, I started changing what I ate too. The lady in the blue coat, her name was Margaret, I finally asked, told me that food plays a bigger role in memory than most people think. She swore by blueberries, walnuts, and a spoonful of olive oil every morning. I figured if I was rebuilding my mind, I might as well feed it right. So I swapped out my usual sugary breakfast cereal for oatmeal topped with blueberries and chia seeds. Lunch became grilled salmon with a side of spinach or avocado toast sprinkled with pumpkin seeds. And every evening I ended the day with a handful of walnuts. Brain fuel, Margaret called them. I even cut back on processed food and soda, replacing them with green tea and plenty of water. Over time, I could feel the difference. My concentration sharpened. My energy stayed steady all day instead of fading by noon. And the best part? My memory was no longer betraying me. It was working for me again. One afternoon, my daughter Sarah stopped by for coffee. As she walked in, I said, "Hey, how's Michael doing at his new job at the bank?" She froze for a second, surprised. "Dad, you remembered that?" I smiled, pretending it was nothing. But inside, I felt tears building. I was remembering again, not just facts or faces, but life itself. Every day, I was becoming the man I used to be. Only this time, stronger, clearer, and more grateful than ever before. This morning, I sat at that same kitchen table where, months ago, I couldn't remember my sister-in-law's name. The same sunlight poured across the photos. The same smell of coffee filled the air. But this time, everything felt different. I looked at each face in those frames, one by one, and the names came effortlessly. Carol's sister, Linda. My grandson, Ethan. My old fishing buddy, Tom Jenkins. Every name rolled off my tongue like a familiar song I hadn't forgotten after all. I took a slow sip of my coffee and smiled. It wasn't just about memory anymore. It was about life. That simple 10-minute habit had given me something my doctor never mentioned. Hope. And hope, I realized, was its own kind of medicine. I still do my brain workouts every morning. Sometimes it's a poem, sometimes a puzzle. Sometimes I just try to recall everything I saw on my walk the day before. The number of cars parked, the color of the flowers, the names on mailboxes. It's my favorite part of the day now. I still eat my brain foods, too. Blueberries, spinach, salmon, eggs, and a drizzle of olive oil on everything. I even make a smoothie with banana, walnut, and flaxseed when I'm feeling fancy. At my last checkup, Dr. Andrews looked at me like he couldn't believe it. "George," he said, flipping through his notes, "whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I just smiled. You see, getting older doesn't mean losing yourself. The brain isn't a candle that burns out. It's a muscle that needs movement, a garden that needs watering. And if you care for it a little every day, it will care for you right back. I'm 68 years old, and my mind feels sharper than it has in decades. So, if you're listening to this, don't believe it when someone says it's just normal. Take 10 minutes. Train your brain. Feed it right. Because sometimes, remembering who you are starts with one small habit, and the courage to begin again.